I know how fast pregnancy goes. Looking back, it's just this little blip of time. And I really just tried to not be impatient. I tried to just trust he's going to come when he's ready. And I tried to just enjoy being pregnant and being grateful for the process. And that helped me to get to 41 weeks without tearing my hair out.
Welcome back to the podcast. And this week, you guys, we have another birth story. So this is from Amber. I'm going to let her introduce herself just a little bit, but she is a My Essential Birth mama, and she's here to tell her story about her pregnancy and her birth. So Amber, say hello to everybody and tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amber. I'm 31 years old. I'm a mom of 3, and we are currently living in New York City.
That's awesome. Okay. With that, and I feel like that means you are a very busy person. With that, let's kind of dive into your pregnancy. So talk to me a little bit about your pregnancy, and we're talking about your last one. Was there anything that was unique to that pregnancy? Did you have any concerns from providers throughout the process, or changing of due dates, or induction discussions, anything like that during your pregnancy?
Yes, so during my pregnancy, in the beginning, I had some food aversion, some nausea. I would go through this process when trying to decide on what to eat, where I would imagine the food, and if it didn't make me nauseous, then I would say, okay, let's eat that. And then I had been considered high risk because of past pregnancy losses. And so I had wanted to go with a group of midwives for my last pregnancy, but they wanted me to get clearance from a high risk specialist first. And so I had found an OB, and they actually had a midwife at that practice. They had like 2 locations. So I ended up just seeing the midwife with that practice. They had cleared me from being high risk. And so I continued my pregnancy with her. And then when I was 20 weeks, they did the anatomy scan, and they had actually seen a cyst in the back of my son's brain. And they said they weren't concerned about it, but they wanted me to follow up at my 32-week checkup. And they did another scan, and it had remained the same. So they had me go back in 4 weeks when I was 36 weeks pregnant, and it was the same thing. It had gotten maybe just a bit smaller, and so they had me follow up after I gave birth. So that was one thing that had come up during my pregnancy. It obviously, I was very concerned, and I'm a vegetarian, so I ate so much salmon after that, thinking it would help with his brain development. The other thing that I did while I was pregnant was I was on low-dose baby aspirin, because earlier in my trying to conceive journey, I had been diagnosed, so they had done a blood test and found out that I had factor V laden heterozygous gene mutation, which basically just increases my risk for blood clots. And so since I had been on the low dose aspirin with my second pregnancy, they had me use it for my third pregnancy. And he was, very active baby. I had gained a lot of weight with him, and I had dealt with like hemorrhoids, and I also had some times during like my last trimester where I would feel like maybe labor was starting. It's like I would feel a lot of contraction like feelings, but then they would kind of go away. But I think that was about it during the pregnancy. It was a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot. Do you mind sharing how much weight you gained? You said you gained a lot of weight, and I know women might be curious about that.
Yeah, it's hard because I had given birth to my daughter in April 2022, and I found out I was pregnant with my son in September 2022. So I was still coming off of that pregnancy. So when I had gotten pregnant with my daughter, I was 120 pounds, and then I think I was about 130 after I gave birth to her, and then by the time I had my son, I was about 150, and I'm 5'4", and I had always kind of weighed around like 110 pounds until, COVID and pregnancy. So it was a lot for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Were there anything that you did like, because other moms might come up against this. For example, the issues that you were having with your son where you had to meet with a maternal fetal medicine and you were concerned about the cyst and stuff. Is there any kind of advice you can give to moms or things that helped you be calm or ask the right questions, or kind of deal with that, even working with your birth partner throughout your pregnancy?
I would say not to go down the Google rabbit hole because, yeah, it'll just raise concerns that are probably very minimal. And talking to my provider and having them reassure me that it was very likely just going to go away on its own, which it did eventually. And I mean, really, it was just trying to do everything I could to have a healthy pregnancy and just, wait out until the next scan.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Thank you. Talk to me about your providers. So, were you happy with this provider? Did you meet with more than one maternal fetal medicine provider, or what was that like for you?
Yes, so for the maternal fetal medicine provider, she was just kind of standard at the hospital. She was nice. She was very informative, and so I really appreciated that. There's a lot of providers that are kind of just in and out. But she actually took the time to sit down and talk to me about everything. And then my midwife, she was very nice when I talked to her about my birth preferences. She was on board. She's like, everything was standard. So yeah, I was happy with my providers at during this pregnancy. It was very strange though that at my actual birth, they didn't call my midwife. They called the supervising OB to come in, and I had never met with him. So that was disappointing.
Do you know why? Did you get any information about why they did not call your provider?
No, I don't know why. When I went in for my 6-week follow-up post-birth, she said that they just never called her.
Wow. Yeah, that would be difficult. That would be a challenge. Well, you're in the throes of labor. Holy cow. Okay. Talk to me about your birth partner. Tell me how he supported you throughout this pregnancy. If there's any challenges you guys worked through together, or what was the most helpful thing that you guys did?
Yeah, so we had done the My Essential Birth course when I was pregnant with my daughter, and I listened to the podcast every day, and we had I had him sit with me during most of the birth course, and so he was able to get a lot of the information, and I had wanted to make sure that he knew as many tools as possible to support me, because my second pregnancy, when I gave birth, I did end up having an epidural, and I was determined to not have that happen with my third pregnancy. And so I really involved him. My mom was also at my birth, so I involved both of them, and I made sure that they were aware of everything that I wanted them to do, my birth preferences. One of the best tools that I had learned about was counter pressure. That was a lifesaver. And yeah, he's very quiet, so think it's hard for him to speak up the hospital. My mom was kind of the person to do that, but he was very supportive in everything that I wanted, anything that I asked for during pregnancy and birth. He was a very supportive partner.
That's awesome. So was he the one that was doing the counter pressure then during labor?
Yes.
And which counter pressure was your favorite? Was it double hip squeeze? Was it just on the back?
Yes, it's where I would be on all fours and he would press in the middle of my back with the bottom of his palms.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good spot.
yeah, and it's great even even not pregnant. It feels good.
It's so true. Oh, I love that. And I love that you had your birth. I'm glad that he watched a lot of that with you. Like for those who are listening
Mhm.
today, like the course, if you take it, it's any course that you take should be done together as much as possible, if that is possible, because they don't know what they don't know. And then once, I mean, maybe you can share a little bit about his experience watching it with him. Was there any conversations that like it really brought to light, or that he was like, oh wow, that's really cool. Now I know, whatever. I mean, obviously counter pressure was one of them. So anything like that that was really helpful for him?
Yeah, I think every step of the birth course, we would talk about it as it was going from nutrition to the stages of birth. It was very informative. Obviously, he didn't learn those things, when he was growing up or as an adult. It's just not something that he that ever crossed his path. So, um, yeah, I think it was just kind of everything we would talk about.
Yeah, that's great. Will you talk about any of the like nitty gritty of the stuff that you were doing on the daily? Was there like mental work that you were doing? Were there exercises or relaxation techniques that you were using? Anything like that?
Yeah, so I had tried every night to put on lavender oil, and then I would listen to like meditation tracks. Really, going to sleep was the only chance that I had to practice my relaxation. I would also do the three exercises every day. I tried to do other exercises as well to keep myself active, and I also invested in a yoga ball, which was really fun and comfortable to sit on. And then I was listening to so many birth stories. I Via podcast, YouTube, I watched so many women give birth, and it was the positive birth stories. I think really helped me get to the mindset.
Yeah, that's huge. And I am with you. When I was giving birth a little bit ago, there were not as many videos online as there are today. And now I feel like you hit YouTube and there's just a million. You can go watch all the births you can stand. And I think that's such a benefit because, yes, we have taken birth out of the home and put the majority of it in the hospital, which is fine. That's a totally good option. However, it does remove the family and everybody that would have seen birth throughout the ages to make it more normal and to make it less scary. And so now we have that option again, even though we're not physically there, we can at least watch it. And I think that's really, really helpful to know what it looks like, to see the safety of it, to see the beauty of it, so that we can get excited about it. So I love that you shared that. And yes, I think like all the birth videos you can handle, I'm sure, like just go find them. I think that's such a good tip there. Okay, why don't we dive into the birth? I want to hear from that very first contraction all the way through what it was like.
Yeah, so actually, when I was 38 weeks and 4 days, I went in for my checkup, and he was breech, and like transverse actually. And so I immediately found a chiropractor to do that method. I forget the name of it,
The
to
Webster
help turn
technique.
him.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so I had one in the next day. It was like a Saturday, and uh, he did. what he needed to do. And then I went back into the chiropractor the following Wednesday, and he did some more work on me. And I had my follow-up appointment the following Friday. So I've been 39 weeks and 4 days. And he thankfully was head down after that. I'm so grateful. I had been looking up all the things about giving birth to a breech baby. I was not going to give up. And so thankfully he did turn head down. And so at that point, I hadn't made any progress. There was no real signs that labor was coming. I wasn't dilated at all. And then she had mentioned about doing an induction if I went past 40 weeks, but she just lightly touched on it. And so when I went in the following week, I was already past 40 weeks. She did membrane sweep. Well, she tried to, but she couldn't quite reach. And I was not going to have an induction so long as me and my baby were healthy. So I was trying to do all of the things to bring labor on. I was doing a lot of curb walking and continued doing the 3 exercises and bouncing on the yoga ball. And then I had a follow-up appointment when I was scheduled for that Monday when I was 41 weeks. And we were going to talk about scheduling an induction date at that appointment, but I woke up that Monday. It was like maybe 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, and I had felt contractions, and I wasn't sure if they were the real thing, because I had previously had some days where it felt like labor was starting and then they kind of fizzled out. So I started recording them, and I went to lay down. I think they were about 10 minutes apart. I put on a meditation track, and I just took a nap for a couple of hours, and then they were still going, so I went to take a shower, and I stayed in the shower for 2 hours. And they had gotten closer together. They were about 5 minutes apart, and they kind of stayed 5 minutes apart. And was so I'm just remembering that I had also hired a doula, but because the hospital only allows 2 people in the birth room, I had opted for her to just come to the house when I was in labor, and my mom and my husband would come with me to the hospital. So as the contractions were coming and they were consistent every 5 minutes, I had let my mom know because she was at work, and I texted my doula, and so she came over. It was about 1:30, and by this time I had gotten out of the shower, I got dressed, I braided my hair, and the contractions weren't very strong. I would get a contraction, and I would just close my eyes and breathe and just really try to relax my body. And once she came over, my doula, my husband brought our 2 daughters to my sister-in-law's house. And my doula and I, we just walked around the block. I did some curb walking, and we went inside. I asked her to show me how to use the peanut ball. And so we laid in bed for a bit with it between my legs, laid on one side, laid on the other side. We went into the living room, and I did some movements. I was on my hands and knees, and then my husband came and was sitting on the on the yoga ball, and we were talking in between contractions. One would come on, I would do the same thing, close my eyes and just breathe. And then I had started to get a couple of contractions that were a little more intense. And the hospital was about 45 minutes, an hour away, depending on traffic. And it was about 3, 4 o'clock. So we decided to go to the hospital because we didn't want to hit rush hour traffic. And so my husband and I went to the hospital, and my mom had followed along in her car. And I was talking through, between the contractions, having regular conversation. I didn't really let anyone know that I was in labor. So I was texting my friends, my family, and thankfully the car ride was very smooth. I know that when you're in labor and you're in the car, it can be one of the most uncomfortable times. And we got to the hospital, and the contractions were still about 5 minutes apart, not very intense. So I had wanted to walk around for a bit, but I had to pee. So we go into the hospital. I figure, oh, while we're here, I should go and get checked. So we go up to labor and delivery. And I walk up to the nurse's station and I say, I think I'm in labor. And the nurse just looks at me like, okay. And she had asked how far along I was. I told her I was 41 weeks. And to my surprise, they had an induction scheduled for me the following day, which I was unaware of. They said, oh, since you're 41 weeks, whether you're laboring or not, you're going to stay. I don't know about that, but okay. So they bring me to get checked, and we were talking, I was joking, and they check, and I was 6 centimeters. So they said, okay, you're going to be admitted. And they had estimated that my son is going to be about 8 pounds, which would be my biggest baby. My first daughter was 6 pounds, 15 ounces. My second daughter was 6 pounds, 2 ounces. So they get me into a room. My mom arrives. I let her and my husband go get coffee, and I'm just in bed, breathing through each contraction. They had at the hospital something called a holistic cart. It wasn't really a cart that they had brought in like I imagined, but they had these like lavender patches so I could get the scent. And they also had tea light candles, little battery operated ones. They had teas and juices, but I wasn't really interested. And so it was about 6 o'clock in the evening when I was admitted, and I had been asking for intermittent monitoring because they had me hooked up to the regular monitor. But because there was the change of shift, the first nurse kind of, I guess, forgot, and then the other nurse came in. I had asked for a peanut ball, which she did bring, but I never got the intermittent monitoring. Then I got up to use the bathroom. I had to pee, and then after that is when the contractions started to get more intense. I wasn't really talking in between them anymore, and I was really leaning on my mom and my husband, asking him to do the counter pressure. And then I had gotten back into bed, and I was on my knees, kind of leaned over the back of the bed. And I had put in a headphone. I was listening to Bridget Taylor has a YouTube channel where she has different meditations for birth. So I found those to be really comforting. And I was low moaning. And then the doctor showed up and they checked me, and I was at 10 centimeters, but my water didn't break yet. And so initially, I didn't want them to break my water, but with my second daughter, after they broke my water, she came very quickly after that. And so I thought if they broke my water, then the same thing would happen, that my son would come very quickly. So my mom had tried to tell them, oh, she doesn't want her water broken. And then I changed my mind on the spot. I said, it's okay, break my water. And they did. And there was another doctor there, a female doctor who must have been, staff at the hospital. And she was checking me after that. And it felt like she was like, maybe trying to stretch or try to like help my baby come down, and it was so uncomfortable. I told her to stop twice, and then after the second time, I think the nurse said something to her and she left the room and never came back, thankfully. um, and I had this really great nurse who had helped me get into different positions in bed, and she, helped coach me with pushing. And then once my baby was almost out, that's when the doctor had come in. And I remember I made a joke at one point and I asked if it was too late for an epidural, which I knew it was, but I was just trying to be funny. And it was really, really intense. I remember feeling like the ring of fire. Um, and I must have started pushing at about 8:30, and he was born at 9:52 p.m. And they weighed him, and he was 9 pounds 15 ounces.
Oh my goodness.
So he was a big baby, a lot more than they had estimated there at the hospital, a lot more than they had estimated even during my appointments. And so, yes, that's why it had taken a while for him to actually come out. And thankfully, they had never measured him accurately, because I can't imagine if they knew he was big, if they might have tried to suggest I be induced or have a C-section or something. So, yeah, he was very, very big. They didn't say really if I tore how bad it was. It might have been a first or second degree tear. And yeah, I think that was about it.
What a neat story. I have some like follow-up questions for sure. Okay, well, first of all, for those who are listening, it's such a like great thing for you to be able to say that like they estimated my baby big, right, at like 8 pounds, and he was even bigger. So ultrasounds, just a reminder, they can be off, give or take by pounds. I think that's really important for you to share that story. The other side of that, and I think you shared something really important there, is I think you're right. If they would have estimated him correctly, or if they would have thought in any way that he was as big as he was, that you may have been given different options. And because you weren't, and you hit 41 weeks and you gave birth just fine, I think that's such a testament to the human body and how incredible mothers are in being able to birth their babies and growing babies that they can birth. So were there any issues once you started pushing with him being big that made it any harder, or any complications whatsoever? Or did your body just do what bodies do when they're pregnant and birthing, and that baby fit right there? Did you notice any differences because of his weight?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, with my second daughter, she had come out really quickly to contractions. She was very tiny. And then with my first daughter, I had been pushing for about 2 hours, but I had an epidural, and it was my first, and she was only 6 pounds 15 ounces. So with him and it taking, about an hour and a half, I think that, maybe if he had been smaller, maybe he would have come out faster. But it he came out just fine. And yeah, like you said, I had pushed in a few different positions, and then I did end up, and he came out. I was on my back, but um, I no, I don't think his size really made much of a difference, and I am, grateful that I was able to have him unmedicated and him being such a big baby because yeah, now I have this story, this proof that it doesn't matter how big your baby is, you can push them out naturally, and you don't need medication because they're a big baby.
Yeah. No, I love that. With your first and second, how many weeks were you when you gave birth to those babies?
My first one, I was 40 weeks and 3 days, and then my second, there's a little back and forth with the due date, but I guess I would have been 40 weeks and 1 day.
Okay. That's so neat. And that's the other thing, too, is like we have these patterns where it's easy to say, yes, on average, women tend to give birth earlier and earlier. But you are like me, where we seem to gestate longer and longer, and that can be normal, too. So I think that's important for moms to hear. So don't, if you are a second or third or fourth time mom and you are listening and you're like, well, I had my baby at whatever weeks last time, so I'm planning on having him early. I'm like, just always plan to go to 42. Just aim for 42, get your
Yeah.
mental space around 42. It'll be better for you. But was there anything like that for you where you passed 40 weeks with this one and you're like getting closer and closer to 41 where you're like, oh my gosh, please get out? Was there any kind of like, were you having any internal battles there or were you totally happy being pregnant at the end?
Oh man. Well, I was definitely uncomfortable, but because he was my third and I not expecting to have any more children, I know how fast pregnancy goes. Looking back, it's just this little blip of time, and I really just tried to not be impatient. I tried to just trust he's going to come when he's ready, and I tried to just enjoy being pregnant and being grateful for the process. Like I said, because I had some inklings of contractions early on, I had this feeling that he was going to come early. I feel like he's going to come really early. And then he came later. And yeah, like I said, I really tried to just be present in the moment. And that helped me to get to 41 weeks without tearing my hair out.
Yeah. Good advice. I like that. How about I have two more contractions. I have two more questions about your birth, real quick. One was how close were the contractions as you went through the story? So, like, I know when before you left your house, you said they were about 5 minutes apart, or maybe it was 5 minutes apart once you got to the hospital. But kind of what did the contractions do along with the time, just real quick? And then what were you finding were your best coping techniques, both mentally and physically? So, you talked about counter pressure. You mentioned some meditations, like what was going on in your head, or what were you telling yourself? What kind of affirmations to be able to get through all of that?
Yeah, so with the contractions, they really did stay about 5 minutes apart through the whole time, which is one of the reasons why I thought that I wasn't in active labor. I guess I had stopped recording the contractions once I was settled into the hospital. It probably wasn't until they started to feel more intense around around 7:30. That's probably when they got closer together and there wasn't as much of a break in between. And for coping techniques, I think I really just tried to relax my body and breathe, and definitely affirmations of just saying, I can do this. My body was made for this. I trust in my body and my baby. And knowing how knowing how to moan, knowing that that is help helpful in getting through the contractions. Like just understanding the process where I was and knowing what to expect and what to do during that stage of, just listening to my body. And I think really relaxation was my my biggest my biggest key to getting through it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's all really good information. Thank you. One more
Hmm.
thing, I know moms really like to know, what did contractions feel like? So in those early stages, where did you feel them? What did they feel like? What was the intensity like? And then as it continued, how did that change for you?
I think in the beginning they kind of feel like period cramps, and they start in your back, and then they would wrap to the front, then lower abdomen, and it does feel like this little mountain of it starts to get more intense, and then you sit there for a moment, and then it comes back down, and it's very much how they feel, just that wrapping sensation, and feeling like very intense period cramps.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good description for people who have experienced that, those period cramps. For moms that don't, we're all jealous of you for starters, but you might not relate to that. So, so yeah. Well, thank you. Awesome. All right. I love to finish these with your best advice for moms, best advice for partners.
Yes. So my advice for moms is to question everything, learn as much as possible, and don't be afraid to ask for what you want. Just trust your body. And then for partners, just be supportive, and educate yourself as much as possible as well, and support the mama with whatever it is that she wants.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your story. And I know it's going to bless so many people. So I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.